Good Monday morning and welcome to the Stalls TV Morning Show. I'm Josh.
I'm Bob Robinson.
And welcome.
Well, thanks.
Bob has been with us on the morning show before and does a lot of education here for Stalls TV, and we're excited to have him on today's episode because we have a lot of discussion around artwork planned for our main discussion, which you're very familiar with.
Moderately, yes.
So modest.
Yes.
Okay. And so there are some other things happening exciting on the Stalls TV morning show. If you didn't join us last week, you missed the announcement that we're now available in the podcast store on your smart device, on your phone or your tablet. And so you can listen to last week's episode, and we'll have all episodes moving forward available for you to listen to in your car or wherever you want to listen to your podcasts at your convenience. And so that's exciting news.
It is.
And then also we have Jenna that's going to do Make It Monday this week, and we have an exciting project where we're going to heat print shoes, which is something exciting as well. Yeah.
All kinds of excitement today.
All kinds of good stuff. And Look of the Week is typically where we start, and so I want to roll it over to this week's Look of the Week, and our winner is...
Zane Wilcox.
Look at that.
That is a pretty impressive design. And what's impressive about it is when you first look at it, I first thought it was print and cut. But it is not. It is all, what?
Fashion film.
Fashion film.
Cut on a vinyl cutter.
That is impressive.
Yeah, so you can cut this on a vinyl cutter. What you're actually seeing here is you're seeing small lines, and the weeding on it isn't actually that difficult because there's a lot of open areas when you're peeling and pulling, and that's going to help correct that issue of perhaps having to go in with a weeding tool. It all pulls out in one piece. And then you'll notice there he's utilizing the shirt color to his advantage to create sort of a third or fourth color design.
That is impressive, truly is.
So congratulations to Zane. He will win a surprise box that will be chock full of scrap heat transfer vinyl, a lot of different transfers and things that we will reach out to Zane and
Box so fun.
Submit that out. And we have some honorable mentions this week that I want to bring to your attention. So first, we have Nancy that submits regularly on our Facebook submissions, and we wanted to point this one out because it was receiving a lot of feedback because of the shirt style specifically.
Yeah, that's very, very nice, very trendy. I believe this is from, what, SNS Activewear, the MV Sport line?
Yeah, so MV Sport is the brand of the shirt available from SNS Activewear. Right. You get the contrast colors both on the sleeves or the color blocking effect, and you also get the laces there. Utilized for the drawstrings on the hoodie. And this received a lot of great feedback on Facebook, people asking who was the vendor. Yep. And then something brand new is we have a Dad of the Week.
Yay for dads.
All right. And Sean Burley is our Dad of the Week. We're just having a little fun here, but I was impressed and wanted to point this out as an honorable mention because Sean has just invested in a heat press, a top-of-the-line Hotronix Fusion heat press for his 15-year-old daughter to start a business.
That beats the heck out of an iPad.
Yeah, I agree. And so the idea of she's aligning a transfer here that was in her heat press success kit, which is included with every heat press purchase from Stalls, but it's pretty cool to see kids getting involved at such an early age into heat printing, and it really is a technology that's easy to execute and lets kids express their creativity and learn fundamentals of business, and better than playing video games, right?
Start them young.
Yeah, and as a side mention to that, with the availability of small format cutters, even at your local craft stores, it's a great way to let kids and adults express their creativity through heat printing. And so those are our Look of the Weeks. So we want to thank everybody for submitting. And as you may know already, there are 3 ways to submit. In case you don't know, you can email them to tv@stalls.com. You can share them on our Facebook page, which is every Saturday, Stalls Show and Tell, or you can tag us on Instagram by tagging @StallsTV and be submitted into the Look of the Week. Now, our Look of the Week is Make It Monday. And for that, we're going to turn it over to Jenna for this week's edition.
Thank you, Josh and Bob, for having me on this morning for this week's Look of the Week, which is our Make It Monday. What we're going to be doing is heat printing As Josh mentioned, but not just any kind of shoes. We're going to be printing light up shoes. These are very popular in retail stores, maybe some kiosks in the mall, and maybe for some of you that are on-site event printing for a lot of cheer and dance competitions. A lot of hip hop dancers are wearing these, so that's what we're going to be customizing these for today. And I'm going to get started, but before we load these on, I want to show you the platen that we're going to be using today, and this is our shoe platen. This is going to make it very easy for loading our shoes on here and getting a nice flat print area. So as many of you know, the Hotronix comes with a lot of interchangeable platens, and this is one of the options you have. So we're going to lock that in place, and we're going to start by loading our shoes on. So when we do that, we're going to go in by aiming to put the toe in for the top of the platen and then just sliding in the back part of the shoe so that it's nice and flat and we get a good surface for printing here. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Make sure the strap's out of the way so we get nice even pressure. And I'm going to be applying Fashion Film Electric this week. So I'm going to start by just placing that down. And Fashion Film Electric has a tacky carrier, so we don't have to worry about it moving whenever we put our cover sheet on here. And I want to point out, I'm just going to start by using our craft paper. So with Fashion Film, it has a Mylar carrier, and if you're putting it on there for the full application, which would be 15 to 20 seconds, you're going to tend to get a square around the design you're applying. So to avoid that happening, we're going to just cover it with a cover sheet, do a quick 2 to 3 second tack, peel our carrier back hot. Fashion Film Electric is a hot peel. And to apply these, we're going to grab our flexible application pad. So this is going to protect our shoes under the high heat since we're going to be applying this for 25 seconds total. The flexible application pad is something that you can find on stalls.com, so you guys can visit the website to have an option there for different types of cover sheets that you can use when printing different items. All right, and we have our completed Make It Monday light up shoes, perfect for a hip hop team or a dance team.
I don't know about you, Bob, but I found that very enlightening.
I get it, enlightening.
Yeah.
That's cool. Hey, make sure that you share with us what you would like to see on future episodes. At the end of this broadcast, there'll be a brief survey there. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, hopefully you're enjoying the Make It Monday sessions. It's one of my favorite parts because we're actually teaching you hands-on at the heat press. For those of you that may be listening to this episode and not watching, I would encourage you to visit stallstv.com under the broadcast archive, which is in the top navigation under live events. You can come back and watch that at a convenient time for you.
Perfect.
And so on to today's discussion, which is centered around artwork. And artwork sort of is, between costing and pricing and artwork, these are probably the two biggest challenges and most asked about things by viewers. And so today we're going to try to tackle artwork in about 15 minutes and give you sort of the foundation of creating artwork for heat printing specifically, and then expound upon different production processes and best tips and tricks and art that's required.
Sure.
So let's start with the basics of artwork, which would be understanding the difference between a raster and a vector file. Can you shed some light on that for us?
We can, and I do want to throw out the disclaimer, you're not going to be a graphic artist by the end of this if you weren't before. This is just a good overview to help understand some terminology, understand processes, what works for what and why and why not. But yeah, vector versus raster. Vector art is if you have to have one type of art, vector is the stuff for me. It's a design that is able to be blown up as big as you want, where raster can sometimes get pixelated if you take a small image and blow it up. But vector typically is pretty much line art. So it's made up of little individual nodes. You kind of connect the dots around that, so it ends up, without the color fill, you end up looking like a coloring book that hasn't been filled in yet, just basically outlined around the outside. And that's what you need for a lot of the processes.
Yeah, so vector art is something that's very popular for vinyl cutting, which we tend to do a lot here on the morning show.
It is absolutely necessary for vinyl cutting, for sure.
And then raster art, on the other hand, is more comprised of small pixels, correct?
Correct. Just little dots that are ganged together to formulate a design, just like your television screen is made up of pixels, little dots that make a design.
Yeah, and raster art is used through a variety of process. Sublimation comes to mind as one of those where you can just sort of print any artwork and transfer that onto an item that's compatible with sublimation. When we start to look at raster and vector art, I think it's important to understand that most artwork is raster when it starts. If you grab an image off of Google or your customer brings in an image, typically you're going to get a raster file format. Some common ones are JPEG, PNG, TIFF files,
Sure.
Or a few common ones. And when we look at vector production files, often you'll see that vector in the form of PDF, CDR, AI, EPS, to name a few. Just because it's that file extension doesn't make it vector art.
That's correct.
But a raster file needs to be vectorized or turned into line art to make it cuttable.
Right. A vector file is something that was created in one of these graphic arts programs like CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator or Flexi. There are a number of them out there. Industry standards, pretty much CorelDRAW, even though the very technical, true artists who went to school for this type of thing and are very, very skilled usually start with Illustrator because they're working on a Macintosh, and that's very compatible together. But in the production world, you're going to find that it's a Corel world, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Or
so
fortunately.
but yeah, so depends on who you are, right? It's the
Right.
Mac versus PC debate,
Right.
All over again. But Corel and Illustrator are two of your most common vector art creation programs that people are using to create artwork for cutting or for print cut or for screen printing. And then you start to have some options now that are open source or free programs. And so Inkscape is one of those. And then, of course, at Stalls, we provide customers with CADWorksLive.com. Now, the benefit of understanding one of those programs, creating your artwork through those programs, is that it can be used for pretty much any production process. If you start by creating it in vector, it can always be used for your print-only processes like sublimation or DTG.
That is correct. Even if you're doing something as simple as transfer papers out of your standard inkjet printer or a laser printer, it doesn't hurt to have vector art. In fact, it's actually a cleaner look overall. Your edges are actually even cleaner on the edges.
Okay, and so just some common questions that we hear related to artwork. If I'm starting with a raster file, a customer brings in a piece of artwork to me, and I want to take it through a vector production process, whether that's vinyl cutting, print cut, or screen printed transfers, what are my options?
Well, if you have a true graphic arts program like CorelDRAW, for example, I say Corel a lot because that's what I'm used to. You can trace it. It's basically vectorizing in there. It'll actually do a trace of that design. And depending on how clean or how high a resolution your raster image is to start with, as to how well it turns out when you're tracing it or vectorizing it there. So you can do it right within that art program of Corel or even Illustrator for that matter.
Okay, so there is sort of an automatic trace function that we're speaking to here. I know CADWorks has one as well that's called just import and vectorize under the CADWorks menu, but there's a lot of sort of stock options built into art creation programs to vectorize things because it's a very common use case.
Right.
If you are a graphic artist, you can manually trace that as well.
Not me.
Yeah, not me. Not me either. So my sort of workflow is I would take that raster file, I'd bring it in my case to CADWorks or Corel. I would try to run the automatic trace. As you mentioned, higher quality sort of image in and higher contrast image in, like a black and white image, silhouette style image is going to trace a lot better than one with 9, 10 colors in it, or a photo, realistic image. So I will do my best trace possible. And then sometimes, like in Corel, you can go in and you can actually adjust the nodes or clean up the results of the trace to get a nice graphic with smooth lines for cutting it. But if it doesn't do a good trace for me, I'm not a graphic artist, and I will typically punt to somebody that can do the vectorization for
Yeah,
me.
that editing can be very time consuming and eventually becoming cost prohibitive because you're taking just too much time to get the design done. So you're right, punting is a good idea.
Yeah, and so depending on sort of how you plan to use that finish art, there's a couple different ways you can punt or basically give up and outsource, let's say, your art creation. Number one is it helps to have a graphic artist or designer that you can freelance to, or a few designers that you can freelance to as part of your business and only pay when you need it created rather than keep somebody permanent on staff that may require a lot of money.
Correct.
You can also use a service such as Artvark Express, upload your file and basically pay to have it turned in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on the speed
Clean and easy.
of needing it vectorized. And then often, like if you're ordering a transfer from Transfer Express or a CAD cut design from Stalls, you can send them that raster image and basically pay their artists the fee that we would charge or they would charge per half hour or hour to get it vectorized. Just basically that's your freelancer, is your transfer manufacturer.
Which kind of makes sense because they're going to end up doing the production on it anyway, so they might as well have it in-house and they're working within their own regulations of what they can and can't do.
Yeah, and so you can invest in graphic design software, learn it, do it yourself in Corel or Illustrator. That's usually a long road. And so I would prefer sort of to outsource those areas that I'm not as proficient in. I'd rather spend my time heat pressing garments, selling, marketing, doing the things I can do well.
But it doesn't hurt to start the process, to learn, to at least know your way around some of these graphic arts program. Eventually, you can end up doing a lot of those things that you're outsourcing yourself just by picking it up. A lot of folks don't even have any official training or any formal training, but you start playing with it, and it ends up being kind of fun. You kind of get lost in it. It's like surfing YouTube or something. After a while, you can't get off of it.
Yeah, we know what that costs.
Yeah.
Money, opportunity cost. But yeah, it's certainly nice to train yourself and learn. I know I'm sort of self-taught on CADWorks as well as Corel, and know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be a full-blown graphic artist. So just to sort of get clarity based on process, what I'd like to do is go through sort of the major processes specifically that are finished at the heat press and talk about art consideration from A to Z. So let's start with vinyl cutting because I feel like we've covered that one fairly well and summarized that.
It's vector art all the time. You gotta have vector art. It's what the cutter reads or each one of those nodes to be able to cut it all.
Okay, so vector art creation ultimately gets translated over to from your design software to a cutting driver, which basically sends the information over to your cutter.
Right. There's two parts to every process when it comes to art creation versus taking it to the device. So you're going to have the art creation portion, and then what you mentioned, a driver, which actually makes the device go, whether it be the cutter or printer cutter.
Okay, so that's vinyl cutting, and there's even some vinyl cutter units, especially in the small format now, that have built-in scanning and vectorization into the cutter itself, like the Brother Scan and Cut, because that's such a challenge for a lot of people, is vectorizing
It's
the
actually
art.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that machine. So next is print cut, and print cut can be executed through a variety of devices. The most common way that we talk about here for quality and durability is solvent or eco-solvent printing, like a Roland VersaCam,
Right.
but it can also be executed through printing on like an opaque transfer paper on an inkjet printer and then feeding it into a cutter with optical eye registration.
Correct.
So what are the artwork considerations for print cut from start to finish?
Well, for print cut, for a true print cut device, so like a Roland VersaCam as we spoke, vector art is really key. It will print raster images just fine. But when it comes to cutting the outline around the outside, that needs to be vector. Now you can vectorize the entire image and then apply the cut line to it, or sometimes your raster image isn't the highest of quality, there's a little bit fuzzy edges. Sometimes you will actually trace it, save your original raster image, and then copy just the outline around the outside and paste it to the raster.
Sure, and now for clarity for our viewers, before we move too far away from it, you say assign the cut line around it. What does that mean?
Well, when you're printing onto this white substrate with your printer cutter, you need to get rid of the excess white. So we're going to put an outline typically around the outside of the design. Sometimes it's inside cavities, and you can do those things there as well. But we need a vector line for the cutting portion of it. The printing part of it, it'll read raster, it'll read vector, but we need to have that outline around the outside. Now there there's a process specifically for Roland. There's a spot color. I don't want to get too technical with it, but every RIP software, raster image processing, I learned that a couple years ago, it has that, and that's kind of like the driver for our printer cutter. It will read a specific color, and you assign that color to that outline, and that's what does the cutting for you.
Yeah, and so you don't necessarily want the printer cutter has cutting capability, but you don't want to necessarily cut all the cut lines. And so if we had like this Stahls TV logo behind me, because that's the closest thing, the vinyl cutter would see all of this and cut this, but basically we're assigning a color just to the outline of the image and printing the rest. So you're not getting cut lines through your image.
Exactly. We're printing the detail and then just cutting around the outside for the most part.
Okay, so that can combine raster and vector art, but the whole image can be vector art. Basically, we're assigning the cut path that we want the machine to recognize with a custom color naming in the software.
Exactly.
So that's the print cut process, some of the benefits of which gives you full color all on a single layer, better than layering vinyl, photo quality, gradients, et cetera, et cetera. There's tons of video content on that. Let's talk, go screen printed transfers next.
Screen printed transfers, they require, screen printed transfers.
Or screen printing, same difference.
Same principle, yeah. Vector art is the way to go because we're talking layers now. We're talking individual colors. Every color has to be separated from the rest. As if you were cutting multiple layers, you're going to cut them by color. The same way happens with screen printing. You're going to put down that blue and then register the red, go over top of that. So every one of those has to be separated, and therefore it's not pixelated. It has to be vector.
Yeah, and so when you talk about like sending transfers in, sending designs in for transfers to like a Transfer Express when it's custom artwork, you can set that up as vector art and save the fee, or they will basically come back and say you're going to have to pay this per design. But the cool thing is there are design programs from these suppliers, like Transfer Express has a program called EasyView that's a part of their website. And basically what you can do on that is you can create artwork from within EasyView that will be set up for their process, and that's a way to sort of save that fee if you can utilize a program like that to get your designs over.
And it helps with inspiration and get some ideas. I mean, there's a lot of templates within there, and a lot of designs can fall under this particular template and customize for your customers' needs.
Okay, let's do a little bit of a shift here. I don't want to leave sort of the vector mode yet, and so let's talk about applique. Now we're starting to introduce itty-bitty stitches into the process.
Applique, yeah, that is a whole nother skill set, if you will, but with the right programming, it's not that tough. I mean, you hear the term digitizing, it's always an upcharge. Somebody has to create stitch files, essentially, starting with a vector art, a PLT typically, some sort of vector output. Bring it into this software that creates stitches around the lines wherever you want it to stitch, especially with applique. Now, the nice thing with applique is we're just going around the perimeter and sewing down a piece of fabric, or in this case, the Ripway applique, the glitter flake, or any type of material there. But that is another vector type of program. But instead of lines, it's putting stitches, whether it be zigzag or satin, and you can edit those accordingly.
Yeah. So we start with the vector art. If you're doing a traditional applique, you're actually cutting the material on one device and then basically creating your sew file to sew out that material on your other device, which would be the embroidery machine.
Correct.
You mentioned the Ripway applique. The benefit of that is now I just need to have the sew file, no longer need the cut file.
Right.
But you're right, the vector art is required to apply the sew file, and there are programs that will do that for you. So vector art is key for the applique process, regardless of how you're executing it.
Yeah, and good news is there are easy applique software out there. TwillStitch Pro Plus is one, to mention one, where you really don't have to be a true bona fide digitizer to just convert to applique, and it'll put the stitches on there, and you can edit it from there on too, until it looks good.
Okay, let's shift a bit to raster-based art processes and talk a little more in depth about sublimation. And this one's basically plug and print, right?
It is. Anytime you're looking at a transfer process, whether it be, I'm saying direct transfer like sublimation or transfer papers, all we're doing is printing onto a paper just like you would a regular document, usually in the mirror image and for sublimation, and vice versa, depending on the type of material, transfer paper that you're using. So in this case, raster is just fine, but vector is okay too. So just printing, it doesn't matter whether it's vector or raster. Sometimes I think the vector art still is a bolder, cleaner look. You get better colors in my mind. But either are doable as long as you get a high resolution on the raster.
Right, and this is why with the technology on our phones and being able to take photo quality images and transfer those over to items, this is why you see sublimation and standard transfer papers that don't require vector art as sort of consumer-friendly products. So when you look at a mall kiosk or a beach store or something where they're saying, bring in your image and we'll get it over to a shirt, a mug, a mouse pad, you often see sublimation because we don't want to pay or take the time to have an artist try to take something like that, convert it to vector file to quickly turn it.
In a lot of cases, they're photos too. So you have to have raster images for photos to get that detail that you need for skin tones, et cetera.
Yeah, so sublimation transfer papers, those are some of the benefits. Of course, they have their limitations too from a technology standpoint, but it's very easy on the art side, especially if you have high resolution photo quality artwork. I don't have it listed here on our outline, but I'm going to throw it anyways because I feel like somebody may have the question.
I'm so scared.
Curveball. Now, DTG, because I know you're familiar with that too. There are some special considerations for that for the raster art process as well, with making sure you have a sort of a transparent background image.
Correct. Yeah, you want to make sure that you don't have that square around the outside. Otherwise, you end up with a square around the outside. But you do want to. In this case, raster image is just fine, which makes that a very popular process too. So there's not a whole lot of art prep for that.
So another print-on-demand PNG files maintain the transparency. So if you have something with a transparent background, bringing it as a PNG is a great way to maintain that sort of transparency. You don't get the box.
PNG and I think a TIFF file works as well.
Okay, excellent. All right, so hopefully trying to see if there's any questions coming in relative to artwork. Do we have anything coming in, Joe, at the moment?
No, we're clear on all our questions.
All right. Another sort of things, just to sort of wrap this up, is that talks about artwork and the process. When we start to talk about artwork and charging for it as a business, we went to Moose's Enterprises and shot our first shop visit series, The Blueprint. What we just shared in our second episode, which was released a week or two ago, and you can see that on stallstv.com, is that artwork was a major challenge for them because they had one artist who was spending a lot of time on creating artwork for customers that sometimes didn't translate to orders, which took up his time. It's a small team of 6 people, and one of them was consumed with creating artwork that may not translate to orders. So as a business, what are some rules I should look, or what should I think about as far as artwork, how to charge for it, how to do that?
Yeah, definitely charge for your artwork. At least have it built in somewhere. You're spending time creating designs, doing a skill set that your customers cannot. So that has value to it. So charging for it can go in a couple ways. You can just straight up front say there's a half-hour art fee and kind of give them a little bit of an estimate up front as to how difficult this design is going to be to translate it to our processes. Or some folks will say, here's what your art fee is, but with an order up to X amount, we can apply that to the final bill so that you kind of get that back. It keeps you from having to do all this work and then customers say, nah, we're not going to do this after all, and then you just spend all that time and money into the artwork.
Yeah, art charges may apply, and having a rate for it gives you the ability to charge it or to waive it. And waiving it's a powerful tool as well, especially if somebody brings in artwork and you're like, oh yeah, I can knock that out in 30 seconds or a couple minutes through the EasyView Designer on Transfer Express or through the template designer on CADWorks or whatever it may be. It gives you the ability to waive it, but I definitely think associating a cost to it, because the reality is it costs your business time and labor dollars or outsourcing fees. So making sure to do that, and I like the idea of crediting it to a customer's order if they actually move forward to the next step and place an order over
And the nice
X
thing
amount.
is if it's a repeat order going forward, you at least maintain that file and be able to reproduce it and then waive the fee at that point for sure. Some folks will also just kind of build the art fee in every order. So if I've already done my cost and I know that per square foot, per square inch, or whatever design, this is going to cost this much, at a certain percentage that could pretty much equate to what the cost of the art fee would be within there. And so it's kind of transparent, or not, it's kind of hidden cost in there, but you've got it covered.
It's captured, yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I think there's a question coming in. I want to stop and take that before we move on to the next point here.
For sublimation artwork, how high resolution do you recommend?
Do you have a recommendation? Depends on the size.
It
of what you're
does.
printing.
300 DPI has kind of been kind of like the norm, kind of the standard. I wouldn't go dip much lower than that. From what I've understood, I'm not a huge sublimation expert, nor am I a graphic artist. I just played one on TV.
Yeah, right. And I'd say if you're doing a tile mural that's going to encompass a whole wall in somebody's kitchen or bathroom, whatever it may be, versus a small design that's going to fit on the front of a mug, it's going to be different. But I think 300 DPI is pretty standard.
Yeah, resolution is kind of gauged on the viewing distance too.
Yeah.
So like you said, if I'm looking at this Waffle House mug, sorry I was hiding that from you, versus like you said, a billboard or a full wall of tile or a banner or something like that, that can be much lower DPI.
Okay. So when we talk, the other point I want to talk, we were talking about sort of how to charge for artwork as part of the process, how to roll that in, and then you may see some businesses that don't charge for artwork, and that's definitely a strategic element, and maybe they don't even have it built into cost. So sort of with on-demand customization, you see a lot of folks trying to put art creation into a customer's hands. There's a few ways you can do that. There are some online sort of design platforms that you can embed into your website that will allow your customers to sort of create artwork on your website. Something I really like that's from a Stahls company is the EasyView designer through Transfer Express. You can actually turn it into customer mode, which basically erases the pricing, all the ink formulas, all the details that you would know as a apparel decorator, and gives them something that they can sit down and design on, whether it's in your store or alongside you at a meeting spot. And now they're spending their time creating the artwork that can translate into an order. And then a lot of times you'll also see where we'll just operate through a template-based system, and so art creation time is only a couple minutes, and so you don't really need to pass along the cost.
Correct. No.
But if you're doing that, I think making sure to include it as part of your total value proposition, marketing that, because that's going to be a leg up for your business over the next guy that may be charging for artwork. But I think the point we're trying to make here is don't let art be something that you don't consider strategically for your business. Not only how you'll execute it from a production process, but how you'll market it and monetize it to your customer base.
Those are big words.
Woo, worked hard on those ones. Any additional questions coming in before we wrap up today's episode?
No, I have nothing else.
All right, we're all clear. So next week, I'll be joined by Jenna. I'll be on the morning show for the third week in a row.
Whoa.
I'm on a roll here. And we'll be talking all about special effect heat transfer vinyl. So we'd invite you to join us either on Facebook Live or by signing up and attending through stahlstv.com. Thanks for joining us this week.
Great to be here.
All right, and thanks for watching.